Experts who have tested the Bushnell Holosight have given it rave reviews as one of the most effective and innovative gun sights ever made. The Bushnell Holosight is the first gun sight to use a revolutionary new concept in gun sighting systems: advanced laser holographic technology. Most users experience much faster target acquisition because with the Bushnell Holosight, you can sight from any distance behind the reticle view window without taking both eyes off the target. The Bushnell Holosight is a highly sophisticated piece of equipment. Its battery-powered microprocessor operates a unique laser holographic system. As you can see, laser holographic technology offers shooters capabilities and benefits never before available in gun sighting systems. It doesn't matter what position you're in or what angle you're shooting from. Your eye does not have to be lined up behind the Holosight in order to see the reticle. Bushnell's Holosight becomes an extension of your body, eyes, and mind. And the bottom line is a higher level of shooting performance.
Good morning, good evening, and good night. Welcome to the channel, guys. Welcome to Foghorn 5. If you know the difference between a red dot and a Holosight, go ahead and leave a comment down below. Let us know. The comment section's a great time. Everybody's pointing fingers saying this is right, this is wrong. If you don't know the difference though, no need to worry, because that's exactly what this video is going to be about. And today we're going to go into that topic with none other than the very first ever commercially available holographic red dot. This right here is the Bushnell Holosight. Later would be known as a little company called Eotech. But this optic right here is actually where Eotech got its start in the commercial world. So there's a lot of cool history behind this optic. It's a great optic for what it is. It's pretty cool, it's pretty rare. I'm pretty lucky myself that I was able to get my hands on one. So with that being the case, I want to go ahead and make an in-depth video on this optic just because how much of a cool piece of history it is. If you're a fan of retro military vibes, this optic right here is going to be right up your alley. I'm actually pretty sure that there's a optic like it in Black Ops 6, and as we all know, Black Ops 6 is definitely about that retro vibe. And if you are a Delta Force fanboy, then you're definitely going to like this video. You might even recognize this gun right here. And another little thing for my Delta Force boys, I do have a video going over how I made this helmet. So if you're curious about that, if you're planning on making your own, go ahead and check that out. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get into the history portion of this video. Talking about the history of Eotech, the study of holography, and how that optic right there got commercialized and put into the hands of civilians in law enforcement use. In 1946, the University of Michigan acquired Willow Run Airport from the federal government to use as a research facility. Scientists from Willow Run Laboratories would approach the U.S. Air Force with a proposal to create anti-ballistic missile defense systems, a deal that would eventually get approved. Scientists from Willow Run were researching multiple things at the time, not just missile defense systems, such as remote sensing technology, ruby lasers, and most importantly, holography. The government would help fund their research, asking how can holography help the government and could it be commercialized? So moving on a bit further in time into the 50s, this monstrosity right here is an image of the very first ever holographic sight invented by Willow Run's laboratories. It's a far cry away from being anything practical, but for scientists, it was a success. I've heard that optics like this were being used on vehicles such as planes, possibly tanks, but I've just heard. I don't have any actual backing behind that. I'm just throwing it out there that it could be a possibility that these things were actually being used. Now moving on into 1972, the University of Michigan spun off Willow Run Laboratories into the Environmental Research Institute of Michigan. So now the laboratory and the study group is changing their name into ERM. They are not a company yet, they are just a government-backed research group or research facility. What is to become Eotech is now truly getting its footing though. ERM would prioritize the research and development of remote sensing and holography. It wouldn't be all the way until 1993 that ERM made its first practical prototype that could fit on a rifle. So that's a really big gap of time from the 50s to 93. But with technology advancing, things could now be smaller, and although this is nowhere near a final product, it's cool to see the parallels of all the components you see on your modern Holosights to this prototype Holosight. Features like reticle adjustment screws, weaver mount rails, or now would be Picatinny mount rails, battery battery powered, and although it still had some bulk, needing a long optical path to project onto the glass, it was proof of concept that holography could be commercialized. The only thing now was that ERM didn't have a brand or a company. They had really no real way to market their idea in any impactful way. So two major things would now follow. First, ERM would strike a deal with the hunting optic company Bushnell and leverage their brand name and reputation to release the very first ever holographic weapon sight during the 1996 SHOT Show. The Bushnell Holosight would also go on to win the Optic of the Year award. Secondly, ERM would create their own company brand called Eotech. On the Bushnell Holosight Gen 2, the name Eotech would be stamped on the side of the optic, showcasing Eotech's first ever public brand reveal. There's two generations of the Bushnell optics. There's the Gen 1, which is the one I have right there, and then the Gen 2, which you saw a picture of. Although Bushnell had no hand in developing or creating these two optics, their deal would put Eotech on the map, piquing the interest of law enforcement and the US military. The Bushnell Holosight Gen 1 would see experimental use on Delta Force M4A1 carry handle and flat top rifles. Protective covers and shrouds would be made for military and law enforcement use because the optic just wasn't robust enough. After creating the Bushnell Eotech Holosight Gen 2, with its now more short and robust design, the military would be interested and strike a deal with Eotech to further research and make the iconic robust Holosight that we all know and love today. So as you heard, it would take a lot of time, effort, and research for these holographic optics to hit the market. You know, there were other options out there. There was fiber laser red dots. There was just standard projection red dots, as most commonly you'll see. But holography is an entire science and study on its own, and it's actually, in a way, recreating a three-dimensional image within the glass. It's a science that I can't explain, and maybe later on I'll make a video actually talking about it a bit further. There is a big difference, and within using the optic, you'll see a lot of differences, such as parallax. So what parallax is with a projection style red dot optic, since it's being projected onto a piece of glass, when that piece of glass shifts your view side to side, what it's going to do is stretch out, because once again, it's just a projection. So it's just light beaming on something. But with holography, the actual image that's being projected is somehow inside of the glass. There's no skew on it because it's not being stretched or pulled. It's a three-dimensional image that is always facing you no matter which way you look. In theory, the optic never moves and it's always going to be properly on target. That is why Eotech is the leading, red dot company out there. All right, so here we go. We got the Bushnell Holosight off of the M4A1, which big shout out to Tyler for letting me borrow his Tokyo Marui for this video because I don't have an M4A1. What I want to do is kind of show a little comparison. So I got two other Eotechs right here. Right there, we got the Bushnell Holosight Gen 1, obviously, and now we have an Eotech 511. And lastly, I have a Eotech XPS. So of course, these aren't all the Eotechs out there. There's plenty more, but this is what I have, kind of just to show you a little comparison, just to kind of see how these optics have changed throughout history and just to kind of see the design paths and the similarities between them. This is actually the only holographic optic that I own, a legit holographic. These right here are replicas, so these are just projection style red dot optics, so it's kind of funny. They're definitely not as high tech as this, even though this is the oldest optic out of the bunch. Kind of showing all the differences. Today was actually the first day that I had ever test fired with this optic. I zeroed it in and was shooting it outside for probably about an hour. I got some footage of that I'll be throwing up every here and there. One thing I do actually want to try to touch on and demonstrate now that we're here is to actually show the difference between just a standard projection style red dot compared to a actual holographic red dot. So I'm going to go ahead and start off just with the standard projection style red dot. So if you're kind of confused what I mean, right in there you could see a little light, right? And that is actually a light emitter projecting the shape of the red dot. So it's very simple. That light is being laser beamed onto the actual glass. When we go ahead and start moving the optic side to side, if you can see, it is starting to kind of warp a little bit. So you see how it kind of stretches to the left, to the right, moving it side to side. Same kind of deal. You'll see that the sides and the corners are stretching, and that technically is actually impacting your zero a little bit. Although this technology is still very popular and still is used primarily for things like pistols, and you know, I mean, there's hundreds of optics out there that still use this system, and it does work well. I'm gonna go ahead and show you the difference of what a holographic red dot actually looks like. Now that you're gonna see, when we pull it left to right, it maintains its shape and there's no warping. So interestingly enough, like I said before, the way this works is it's actually a three-dimensional recreation of a light shape. It's basically facing you no matter how you turn it. This is very cool technology. It's been around forever. All actual Eotechs are gonna have this same exact technology. And so yeah, that's just a little rundown on the differences so you can kind of see why this technology is being pushed for and why it got developed and even patented by Eotech. Actually, something that's really cool is if you take a laser beam and if you shine it through the glass and make it hit the sensor right here, you could actually project the reticle or the optic onto a wall or a surface where you couldn't do it with this. I'm gonna go ahead and show you what that looks like. So you're gonna kind of take it, point it downwards, and shoot it in there, right? So I'm gonna have to lift it off the table to kind of make it project on the table properly. So I don't know if you can see it all too clearly, but I am actually projecting the reticle onto the surface because inside of the glass houses the reticle shape. Like I said, it's kind of mind-boggling science. I don't really understand exactly how it works, but it's pretty crazy stuff. Kind of a cool little comparison to kind of show the differences between these two types of technology. So yeah, without further ado, we're now going to take away our other optics and we're just going to talk about the Bushnell Holosight itself and kind of go into its features because once again, it's kind of a rare item, so you're not going to see them a lot. You're not going to see a lot of people get their hands on them. As a content creator and a collector, it's my job to showcase when I get really cool things like this because, as time goes on, they're going to become rarer and they're going to be hard to find. So let's go ahead and talk about the Bushnell Holosight Gen 1 and what made it so innovative for the time and all of its features and just kind of how it works. There's actually some really cool features on this thing that you're never going to see in optics later on. So without further ado, let's get into the optic features. This model right here is a Bushnell Holosight 400. They made law enforcement models called the 450 LE, LE standing for law enforcement. It's the same sight practically, but it came with a rugged hood that bolted over the top cover of the optic to protect it. So alongside the 450, there is also a 430 comp version. There's technically no photos that relate the two, but what I think the comp version is they made a pistol version with an actual pistol side mount. From what I would understand, that would most likely be the 430 comp version. Lastly, there's also a version with a bolted magnifier. I don't know exactly which one that is. I've only seen it once through a picture, but it actually bolts on right there and then extends in the back. It's an actual optic 2x magnifier, which is very cool. So if I go ahead and flip my optic over, you could see all the information on it. You could see the serial number, manufacture date. This is a 1997. Go ahead and just check that out. So this optic right here is powered by 1.5 volt alkaline batteries. I'll go ahead and show you how you install the batteries. There's a hex screw right here, and we're just going to go ahead and undo that. And the nice thing about this optic is all the screws are the same size, so it just takes one hex key to get to everything. So you're going to head, pop that out, and there you go. Both your batteries are going to be sitting right there. You're not going to get that much runtime out of them. They're not as long as, like a modern Eotech. For the time, for it just being a commercial hunting optic, it was a great battery source and nice and convenient. And you can go ahead and see inside of there the actual battery leads. Same thing with this side. You can see the little prongs in there. So yeah, and it also indicates with the sticker right there which direction the batteries are supposed to face. So we'll go ahead and put those back in. If by chance you do get your hand on one of these, there is somebody on eBay that makes 3D printed battery extensions, and I'm pretty sure it's so you could use AAAs. So it's actually fills the gap from here to the end of this just by, I don't know, however much more it would need to be to stick a AAA inside of there. This optic is all controlled within 4 little buttons. Right here we got a power button. Right here we have a battery check button. And then over here on this side, we have a brightness up and a brightness down with 20 adjustment levels of brightness as would be seen on all Eotechs following. So I'll go ahead and show you how the buttons work. I'm gonna go ahead and turn it on. And you can see now the optic is actually emitting. It's very blown out on the camera. and once again hit that button. It's going to turn it off. One thing that I don't really know is the battery check button. When I hit it, all it does, like if you hold it, it's just making it kind of flash. So I don't really understand how the battery check button works. Probably something where you'd actually need to have your hands on the manual to understand what that's doing. Oh, and then once again, how to turn the brightness up and down. So we're going down, 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 and now we're going back up. So the buttons are cool, they're nice and quiet. That is a plus side as opposed to how Eotechs now work. They're very loud and clicky. So it is kind of cool for that sense because once again, these are hunting optics. So small sounds like that probably would upset an animal. Although it is kind of cool and a vibe for, you know, the 90s, kind of reminds me of like VCR remotes. At the same time, it is not the best. And they definitely went ahead and improved on, because I'm sure I'm not the only one with that complaint. Clamping this thing on here. So once again, this is actually not Picatinny. This is a Weaver mount. It still will work on Picatinny stuff, but once again, it's mainly made for Weaver because that's what they were using back then. And to adjust it or to clamp it on and off your Weaver mount, you're gonna go ahead and twist this. Plenty of optics have this, and then that's just gonna be loose, and then you're gonna be able to stick your Weaver mount in there. And then obviously your screws are going across right there, so you could stick it right in between the slots of the Weaver mount, so then it's definitely not moving anywhere and it's not gonna slide around. So with that out of the way, kind of going into a little bit more of the visual stuff, you could see that it says Bushnell Holosight with a very cool retro looking design. There's a little warning sticker right here, just a caution to not stare directly into the laser emitter. And over here on this side, we're gonna have the logo once again. Adjusting 0, very easy on this. You're just gonna take a flat head and you're gonna twist that, going up or down, and then on this side going left or right. When you are actually adjusting this optic, this little spring right here that's exposed, you're pulling it forward. This like little gap right here will actually start to close up a little bit more as you go on and adjust the optic. Pretty interesting, kind of crude design in that sense, but it's just very cool and such a vibe for the time and for what this optic is. So now going into the two features that you're not really gonna see in optics kind of ever again, at least from what I've seen. Like you saw before, this optic has 20 levels of adjustment, but it's actually not that dim hunting at nighttime. So I don't actually have one. This is the laser emitter, this thing right here. So when you turn that on, it actually starts to glow a little bit. Sensor pad looking thing. You could kind of see that there is a little rail right there. It came with these little dimming filters that were square, and you would slide it into there. So if you were shooting at nighttime, you could actually dim your optic more. And interestingly enough, the 450 LE versions, the law enforcement versions of this optic, came with an even darker dimming filter because shooting under night vision, the optic at its lowest point is still too bright. And now the last feature that you're gonna see on this optic and never really see again is actually the fact that you could change the reticle. And it's done in a very interesting way. Right here, there is a hex screw. Undo that, you're gonna loosen that up. Take that out. And now what you do is you go ahead and slide this piece of glass out, and they would actually sell kits where there's different reticles held within these pieces of glass. If you go ahead and turn this over, you're gonna see I have just the standard reticle that this optic would come with and what you would know to be the Eotech reticle going further on to the future, and they all would kind of demonstrate with a little sticker right here what the optic is. So very, very cool. A feature, like I said, you just kind of never see again in any form of optics or holosights, because all Eotechs kind of just have their one standard reticle that you see. But this one actually allowed you the option to have different ones. And there was actually a few custom made ones for competition shooters at the time that kind of went over the perfect shape of a target. So very cool. Not only was it trying to become the first ever holographic sight, it was also trying to innovate the idea, make a more comfortable user experience. Also, the way holography works, it makes it a lot easier to make very intricate reticle designs. So you'll see things like Eotech grenade launcher reticles or LMG reticles that have like numbers displayed and stuff like that. That is not so easy to do with a traditional projection style red dot. It's all held within the glass, so you could put information all over the reticle. So with the history and the optic overview out of the way, I'm gonna just kind of go ahead and talk about how I like the optic, what it was like actually using a holographic optic for the first time, because I probably spent an hour or two outside just shooting this thing and kind of comparing it to the other replica projection style red dot optics that I have. Oh, nice. the way it moves is so much more dynamic than a normal red dot. Although it isn't like the biggest difference, especially when it comes to shooting airsoft, it's very noticeable. You could see the difference, the way that this optic lines up on the target. It's a different kind of feel, and it really just moves with you. It flows with you. Even with this, I kind of still find myself correcting myself when I bring the gun up. But when I present the rifle with this, no matter how fast I've gone and how it's fallen within the optic, it's there and it's still there properly, and there's no skew and there's nothing wrong with it. It's just a more confident shooting experience. I'm gonna do some reload drills. Up my hand placement. Besides that, just the look of the optic, it's so cool. When you're actually ADSing it, the sight picture is very cool. There's nothing out there like it. It's a very interesting, cool, retro style kind of optic, and you really get that feel that this is a retro optic when you're aiming down the sights. It's kind of the same feeling I get when I ADS my Mark 18 with the Comp M4, looking through both the iron sights. You know, there's just kind of no other experience out there like it shooting something like this. And with this setup, this is kind of like a Delta Force mid to late 90s clone. And we got the PEC box, the cat grip, and of course the Bushnell. There's some pictures out there where you see some dudes running it like this, and they also run it on carry handles. But this optic and the Gen 2 version of it is very cool because they're kind of in a way leading the way to flat top rails at the time. This is one of the optics that you're going to see very early on that is no longer put on a carry handle M4. So very cool, very interesting. Another cool kind of piece of history, and just a cool like experimental style rifle and clone to have with a setup like this. When this optic was actually sold on the market back in '96, it was going for 600 bucks. So even with its rarity now, it's still a lower price than it was back then. But that's just because technology has outdated it. Nonetheless, I think it's kind of a cool experience to have the first Holosight ever as my first Holosight ever. So eventually down the line, when I end up getting, probably real Eotech or something, I'll have the first Holosight to kind of compare it to, which is really cool. I hope you guys learned something about this optic. I hope you guys learned something just about history and just kind of the study and the progression of holography, because it's very interesting and there's a lot more into it than what I just showed you. And lastly, the final point I kind of want to make is if there are any reproduction optic companies out there interested in wanting to make a Bushnell Holosight Gen 1 to actually get them out there on the market again, get them out there for airsofters to experience in any sort of way. I have one in my possession. I am more than willing to help you out with dimensions and specs and all that good stuff to actually get people to be playing with these things again, because retro stuff is making a resurgence. I have a real one in my possession, and what a cool experience would it be to actually allow people to have these in their own arsenals conveniently and with a lower price point. And also, this is kind of a collector's item, so a lot of people aren't going to want to use it and kind of dog it up and all that stuff. Just throwing it out there just in case anyone knows of or is in the industry of making optics. All right, guys, that's going to do it for today. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you didn't know the difference between a red dot and a Holosight, now you know. So now you got to leave that comment. Thank you guys so much for watching. Really appreciate all the support. Make sure to hit the like button, subscribe, all that good stuff. And if you guys have any further information you want to learn about this optic, go ahead, hit me up. Foghorn Instagram at Foghorn5. Thank you guys so much. Have a great day.
The Bushnell Holosight comes with a 1-year limited warranty. Improve your shooting today with the remarkable Bushnell Holosight, the world's only laser holographic gun sight. For the Bushnell Holosight dealers nearest you, call 1-800-423-3537 or visit us on the World Wide Web at www.bushnell.com.